Okay, I can see, get this here. That's okay. All right, I'll do it. Just move this. Oh, that's. Got it. I can't believe it's been 20 years. It's been an amazing journey. I get to work with great people. I get to do my art. It's just been an amazing 20 years. I'm really blessed. I was born in Indiana in 1952, and a poor family. We had difficult circumstances growing up. I think to escape that, I looked at television, I looked at the movies, and any kind of pop culture. A farm town in Indiana, there's not much glamour there, but I found it wherever I could. And drawing was one way. Drawing was really one way, and television was another. I could really get the glamour through TV and what I saw there. In 1973, I moved to New York City to attend Parsons School of Design, and a couple of years later, I graduated with a 4.0, then left school to see what I could do in the fashion industry. When I graduated from Parsons, I graduated as something of, I was kind of a star when I left school. I'd gotten good grades and done really, really well, and they had high hopes for me. But my first job out was at a very tough place. I was an assistant to a designer, and if I was lucky, I got to pick out a button. But that lasted 3 years. I stuck with it. I worked very, very hard there. And one thing led to another. I just built my connections, and a friend of mine who was a model worked, she did a little bit of work for us, and she did work for Bill Blass. And she suggested that he talk to me. I showed him my portfolio, and he hired me. And it was, I was blown away. I never expected to be working for Bill Blass. But I loved that job, and he was a great boss. I stayed there for about 6 years the first time, and left for a couple of years because I was given an opportunity to do my own line. That didn't work. We were underfunded, and anyway, one thing led to another, and I eventually got back to Blass. He hired me back. But by 1990, I was getting pretty tired of the business. I thought it was about time to get out, and I'd been sculpting as a hobby for many, many years while I was trying to do the fashion thing. And sculpting became a little more interesting to me than fashion. I started sculpting late in my art career. I was 29 years old. It finally dawned on me after being almost 30 that figures and dolls and all that were sculpted, that artists sculpted these things. And once that clicked, I thought, I have to try this. So this was the first head I did. I always keep this thing around because it reminds me where it came from. But it wasn't so bad for a first attempt. But I looked at it, thought it was awful, and kind of put it away for about a year and didn't sculpt again, till I was in my 30s. And eventually I dipped it in paint. When I picked it up out of the paint, I thought, wow, it had some sort of human look. That got me motivated to try it again. And then once I really started, then there was no stopping me. I started out my career sculpting one way. I would look at the form, the outside shape, and try to mimic that in my sculpts. And I got by on that for a long time. But I realized later, if I want to get to another level, that I really have to learn anatomy. And I started taking classes again a couple of years ago, and I'm really getting to know anatomy better. And I'm always late at things, almost, in my mid to late 50s, and I'm still going to school to learn this stuff. But you always got to try to get better. I have a great guy I've worked with for a number of years in Chicago. He's an engineer, and I'll send this off to him. He'll cut the head off, the arms and the legs, and then he'll make molds of that, and then he'll put them into wax. This is wax, and it's like candle wax, except that it's a very hard wax, and you can polish it and clean it. You can also engineer it and drill it, and so what this does is it gets the wax ready for a mold for production. It's a long and involved process. While I was still doing design, I needed a creative outlet because design was getting increasingly frustrating. So I started sculpting as a hobby, and that was so freeing for me. And I became literally obsessed with it. People didn't see me for weeks. I would get so involved in a project. While I was still working, though, I heard of this thing called NIADA, and it was the National Institute of American Doll Artists. Very prestigious and very hard to get into. So my goal was to do whatever I can, work as hard as I could to get into NIADA. In 1985, I attended my first conference where I showed some of the artist members some of my work. They gave me a lot of encouragement. So in 1991, when I had just really had it with the Garment Center, I thought, with the encouragement I had received from NIADA, that maybe doing a doll company would be the right thing. And so I took the leap and started my company in 1991. One of the things I learned when I was learning how to do a business was you have to have meetings. I eventually brought in a business coach. She looked at the business and she helped me see the need for organization, and we instituted weekly meetings. So everybody has a role in this meeting. It's turned out to be one of the best things. It keeps everybody on the same page. So those Tuesday morning meetings are crucial in this business. Joe's title is design director, but he really does. He does that job, and he does it beautifully. He's a great designer. Working with him has been amazing, and working with a talented designer who also has a good work ethic. He's an incredible fine artist as well as a designer and all this. He's a great painter also. He sketched Evangeline Ghastly. He gave me the sketch. I sculpted it for him. So I worked as his sculptor. It was his concept. And he had a very strong concept from beginning to end.
I did a sketch based on something. It was probably right after Corpse Bride and The Addams Family. Evangeline, it's sort of like a mix-up of Tim Burton and Streisand and Lily Munster and all the stuff that I like. There's just something about kind of that glamorous, darker, gothy type of stuff that I've always been attracted to. So that's where that kind of grew out of.
When he brings me something that has such a strong aesthetic, such as Evangeline, I was very open to it. And I took my liberties on the sculpt, so I felt okay about it.
Which was good, It was great that way.
But I learned more through business first and then through the art. I learned that if you want to grow, you have to let go. And when I brought Joe in, who's an accomplished professional, who knew pattern making, knew design, he knew all this stuff as well or better in some instances than I do, it gives me an opportunity to go off and do something else. And sometimes that gets me into trouble, but for the most part, it's been amazing because it helps me, think of ways to build the company and look at different business opportunities.
It should sit so that it's more like this.
Okay.
So it's
Really
a little
exaggerated.
off, yeah, exaggerated. So this side comes, and maybe the back comes down like that.
Okay.
You see.
I had always heard that Toy Fair would be the place to go if you want to start a business. That people get their whole year's orders from that one fair that lasts 3 or 4 days. So I started putting stuff together. I was doing handmade porcelain. I had taught myself mold making. And so I could make these porcelain dolls all myself from start to finish, from design to sculpt to molds to firing. I had a little kiln right in my garage. And so I was able to put together about 9 samples that I took to Toy Fair, and just put, I think I had orange juice cans covered in felt. Those were the stands we used in this, at Toy Fair. I had a 10 by 10 booth. I sat in this little booth with Harris, and we took about $100,000 in orders, which for a small company that nobody's ever heard of was just tremendous. He was so happy. He was supporting me at that time, so during this work. So he was really happy that it looked like the end of that would happen. So it was great. It was great for both of us, and I was thrilled. I was giddy. I was so happy about the orders. And then I got home and realized that we had to produce them. That was a big one, a big moment. In 1993, I got my first magazine cover, and it was huge for me. It was very hard in those days to get into a magazine, much less get on the cover. And I had friends at both magazines, both of the major magazines at the time. But they wanted to make sure that I was going to be around before they wasted a cover on a newcomer. So I eventually did get a cover. It was my vinyl Kaylee doll, our first vinyl, and it was incredible seeing it on the cover. And I think I probably slept with the magazine for for a week or something, just kept looking at it. It was so cool. That was a great time. Early on, as soon as I got the business started, then I started to learn where you needed to go, where you needed to be seen. I mean, I tried to be at any important gathering of collectors that I could be to get my name out there. And one of the most important at the time was Disney had, Disneyland and Disney World had a doll and teddy bear show. They invited me to show a doll. I made a 25-piece edition of Kaylee, which was my first vinyl doll, and dressed her especially for Disney, and we sold out very quickly. So that felt really good. That was a very happy day.